Hello, I'm Bob. Welcome to my little backyard garden. Some of you may wonder, so how do you get a garden like this? Or why do you do a garden like this? The how you get it, I've had this garden for about 3 years now, and I started out, it was just part of the yard with grass. So the first thing I had to do was get that grass off. You got two choices. Some people that are really dedicated and hardcore, which I'd have to say I'm not falling in that category, will take a shovel and they will skim off that top layer of soil. What I did is I bought a tiller on Facebook Marketplace, and I came out and I tilled this up early. I knew I wanted to do a garden, so as soon as I had the first chance in the winter, when the weather broke a little bit, I tilled it the first time. Then I tilled this about 3 times before I planted the first year. When I planted the first year, I did not put down any ground cover. And I had an enormous amount of weeds growing through, which required a lot of work to do it. And it really hampered, because not only one reason, you don't want weeds for a lot of reasons, and one of those is the same nutrition that your plants are using, that's the same nutrition those weeds are using too, so they're robbing from your garden. That's another thing you might want to remember in life. If you got stuff growing in your life that you don't want, it's robbing from the good things that you're trying to get. I went through, I tilled that first year. I bought everything at the farm store. We've got a couple here, and I went out to there and I bought the plants that were potted and in the little plastic containers, and I put those out. And I learned one thing: those are a little more expensive than I thought they were going to be. It's still cheaper than buying everything at the grocery store, but there was an upfront cost to that. So I tilled the ground up and planted those plants, and it did okay. It did pretty good that year. I had a lot of tomatoes, had some peppers, had some types of stuff I grew too that I found out I did not like. I had some peppers I grew that are too hot for me to eat. And then I had some other items that I grew turnips. I like turnips. Nobody else in the family likes turnips. So I'm not growing turnips anymore because I couldn't eat all those turnips. But I just learned through it. Bought the jalapeno peppers and put down. I put cucumbers without the little cage. This is my second year doing the little cage in the garden. The cucumbers did good, but they grew all over the place and they grew on top of each other. The other thing I learned from my first year is I have spaced my tomatoes out. Maybe tough to see, but they're about 3 feet apart from left to right and from east to west on it. So there's 3 feet all the way around each tomato when it was originally planted, to give room to get, because the first time they grew on top of each other so much, I lost a lot of the good fruit off of it. In case you don't know, tomatoes are fruit, it's not a vegetable. And as they say, wisdom and knowledge can be defined. Knowledge is knowing that a tomato's fruit and not a vegetable, and wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. But anyway, that's a little sideline. So what we have also, if you look around, is a fence, because what I found out the first time is I'm not the only living thing around here that likes to eat from the garden. There's a lot of rabbits, there's a lot of groundhogs, there's skunks, there's a lot of everything else that likes to come into my garden and eat. So now I have a fence with a narrow mesh around it, and in some of the areas where the old farm fence was, I have chicken wire that runs along the bottom of that. And that helps keep out those that did not work to plant the garden from getting in my garden and eating my garden. But cucumbers, I have those. And you know, some of the things I really like are cucumbers and tomatoes. I started with cucumbers as a focus. Growing up, my dad and mom would always grow cucumbers, and they would make bread and butter pickles. And that's just a good memory that I have from being a child. There's some things that as you go through, you know, I'm chasing 60 now, and I had a little bit of garden along the way at the last house, but not much. But as I start hitting different milestones in life, I start remembering some of those things from my past that mean a lot, and the flavors that go around those memories I had. I was lucky enough and blessed enough to have a good home, to have a good family, to have good male images in my life, to have good female images. and representation in my life that helped guide me as I grew up. And I'm lucky enough to have my father still with me, and I talk to him frequently and still get advice from him on life and different things I'm going through. But one of those things that's just a pleasant memory is those bread and butter pickles. So I'm using the same recipe when I make mine that they used when I grew up. And I'll tell you, it's just nice to open up that jar and have that. And I can pass that down to my kids as they go on. I don't know if they'll ever want to go grow cucumbers or eat my bread and butter pickles when I'm gone, but you know, it makes me feel good just to think that they might. I have my jalapeno peppers, which I have here, and if you have never heard of cowboy candy, you need to go through and you need to look up cowboy candy and find out what it is. Even if you buy some at the store, you can make it. It takes that hot and that sweet and mixes it together just like life does sometimes. Sometimes you get burned, sometimes you got the sweet end of the deal and it goes on. But you take that and you take the juice after you've had the peppers out and you pour it over a steak and put it on a grill. Yeah, the steak. I mean, I grow a garden, but meat is where life comes from, in my opinion. So you put that juice on there as a marinade and it will just make for a good evening. But the second year, so I've moved into a fence. I also went to ground cover. You know what ground cover did? It kept a lot of the weeds out, the majority of them. Now, if you look close at this one, you will see I've got ground cover. I put down, I've got a pepper plant. I've got weeds right here. There's barely an inch and a half, maybe a little bit more where it's torn, of space. But guess what's growing up is a weed in there. That's how your life is too. You may think you've got all the bases covered and everything in there is squared away. Nothing can get in to cause problems. You've put up barricades, but I'm telling you, if you leave an inch, something's going to come in. That's just how it is. Just realize it. When you see the weed come up, pull it out. You know what? I threw this in away. Let me see if I can find it over here. When I pulled it up, look what I pulled it up by. I pulled out the root. If I did not pull out the root, and I just pulled that off, that would have grown right back in a couple of days. When you look at your life and there's something in there that you don't like, maybe it's envy, maybe it's jealousy, maybe it's pride, maybe it's anger, maybe it's lust, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's unforgiveness. That's a big one for all of us. That can be a big one for me sometimes. You think of bad things that happen and you really just want to get them, but you're just getting yourself. If you don't reach in and rip that out by the root and get rid of it, I'm telling you, it's going to come back. It may not be in 2 days, may not be in 6 months, it may be in 6 years, it may be in 16 years, who knows? It's still there under the surface. So when you deal with it, pull it out by the root and get rid of it. You may have to have some help. You may need to seek professional assistance. You may just need to have a good buddy you can talk to. Maybe you got a family member you can talk to. Maybe you go to your church and you ask somebody for assistance there. Whatever it is, if you can't do it on your own, I would ask you, make sure that you get some help, reach down and get it by the root and pull it out. But we'll go on. Another thing I had last year, you're starting to see some issues here, so I've got to find out what it is. I've got some critters that can get through the fence and they're going to do some damage to my garden. Now, one of the things a lot of people said, some of my flowers didn't make it, and I'll be splitting these and planting them different. I'm planting different type of flowers through my garden that the pests don't like. If you put those around, it will keep some of the aphids around, not all of them, but it will keep a lot of the aphids around, keep them away because they don't like that, and some of the other bugs don't like it. One of the other things I did, up in the corner next to the front, you'll see one birdhouse, and out on the fence posts around, we can't get a good shot of those, but I'll have some better. I've got birdhouses around. Guess what birds like to eat? Birds like to eat little bugs. I had good success so far this year. I'm actually going to put some in the 4 corners of my garden, birdhouses, so they have a nice little warm place to stay, which they will appreciate, and in return, they will eat a lot of the bugs from my garden, I'm hoping, and help me have a better yield. It's a win-win for both of us. But we will see. And also I'm trying new things. Now granted, my expense isn't that big if this doesn't work out for the garden. You know, trying sweet potatoes. Maybe they make it, maybe they fail. I try a variety of a couple different types of peppers. Maybe some of those peppers I will like the flavor. Maybe some of them I won't necessarily like the flavor of. But sometimes in life you got to try different things too and go on. But one thing that I want to back up and circle back around to when I first started those tomatoes with seeds. I didn't wait till I was hungry to start and to plant. You don't plant seeds when you're hungry. You plant seeds looking down the road for what you're going to harvest and what's going to come. If you wait till you're hungry to start planting good things in your life, if you wait till you're hungry and you're desperate to start trying to till the ground and get rid of the weeds and cover things up and do all these different things that is an analogy to the garden, you're probably going to starve to death. You're going to be weak and malnourished. When you're looking at your life, you need to look down the road. Where do you want to be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months, a year, 2-3 years from now, and start planting those seeds. But you know, I started the seeds for these March, end of March, 1st of April, and they did very well. Have a little setup with heat maps and lights and all of that, and my sprouts started everything from seeds, from heirloom seeds, and everything was growing. But then life came along and I had to take unexpected 2.5, almost 3 week trip. And if you're familiar with gardening, you know that's tough to do with seedlings. So I thought I had a plan in place. A lot of times in life I think we have a plan in place to take care of problems. So I put a plan in place, take care of it. When I came back, 70% of everything was dead. All the work I'd put into, all the prep for my garden, which I do each year. And I put out a video several months ago. It's been a while since I've stopped by, but I put out a video several months ago showing the prep that I was doing for the garden. And I did that on the outside, but I was also starting the seeds on the inside so they would grow. And when those died, it was pretty frustrating. But I had two choices: just say, well, I'm not going to have a garden this year, I'm going to have a very smart one, or start again. So, you know what I did? I took some additional seeds that I had, I did the whole process over again, and those seedlings started back up and coming. Some of them were very young when I transplanted them outside, and some of them prospered pretty good because I did things a little bit different. That bad situation I had when everything died taught me something new. I found a new way to start my seedlings in a shorter time and still get the same growth out of them, with some covers, changing some humidity factors in it, a little bit of better food going into the mix, and doing that. So what I have learned from what was looking to be a disaster is next year I don't have to necessarily start so early. I can start a little later if I choose to and still come up with a good garden. The other thing that happened, I made it through that and everything was great. But if you were to look close at my squash and zucchini, you will notice that some of the plants, well, one of them's got a little bit of mildew going on, needs to be addressed. Some of the others are pretty young compared to the larger one. I've got a young one here, got a young one over here. In the middle, I've got a real young one. In the back corner, I've got a very, very young one. Well, that's because we had a windstorm that came through. That windstorm came through, and the leaves that were on my biggest plants, with the ones in the spots now are youngest, caught that wind and it snapped those plants off and killed them. And you know, sometimes that happens in life too. You think you've got a plan, you start everything up, it's going along, something happens, wipes out part of that plan. So you come back, you regroup, well, I'm glad I'm through that. Well, a little storm comes along, knocks you back down again. I had a choice. You know what I did? I took the knowledge I learned from that first situation, I took some seeds, I restarted these from seedlings and put them out there and planted them in the ground. As of right now, it looks like they're going to come along good. I don't know what the future holds. This isn't a big deal. This is a hobby. I do enjoy it. And everybody knows with the cost of life these days, it does help to offset some costs at the grocery store, and I know that I'm getting good, fresh, healthy produce from onions and tomatoes and garlic and cucumbers, zucchini and squash and the peppers. And not just for me, but I enjoy giving it away. And people that don't have the opportunity to grow their own, that they can benefit from it too. But when those things come along and life knocks you down, you can regroup and you can go on. And again, like I was starting to say, this is small. It's not really a big thing in life, but big things happen to us in life. Things come along you don't expect. They knock you down. Maybe you need to replant and start over. What you need to realize is just because you got knocked down doesn't mean you're done. It doesn't mean it's through. It doesn't mean that's the end. And you can also learn from that adversity that came along, so that going forward, you can take that knowledge you've learned and you can move forward from it. Now, one thing I did too is I also got online and read how to quick start seedlings. I watched a couple of videos on to quick start seedlings. I've mentioned before, you're not going to know everything. Reach out to somebody that knows and ask them. Don't be ashamed. One of the biggest problems that we have, especially as men, is pride. Your pride will allow you to stay at the bottom because you're not willing to ask for help. Once you realize that you don't know everything, somebody else out there may have some knowledge, and you're willing to say, hey, you know what? I need some help with this. It can make your life a whole lot better. So it's made my garden a whole lot better, I think. What was going to be zero, I had just a couple of tomato plants. I had no pepper plants. I definitely had no squash and zucchini at all until I did the second start. But it's all coming along good. And who knows, maybe there'll be a storm that comes up tonight and I'll do a video tomorrow that shows, a blank space, but I don't think that's going to happen. We'll see how it goes. I appreciate your time. If you have any comments, thoughts, please give it. If you want to pass this along or share to somebody, that's greatly appreciated.